Okay, hey guys, so I'm remaking the video just because I guess something my kid was using in the background, it was playing, and so you can't even hear any of my voice from the previous one. So this is once again, so I'll just start from the beginning again. This is our new chapter. So we're still in the finance unit. So we're still looking at um, all the same parts of our solver. So the N, the I, the PV, PMT, FV, PY, and CY. The problems are basically just going to be the opposite. And so how they're the opposite is basically in the first unit, we were looking at giving our money to the bank, them giving us back more money than they gave them in most instances because we've earned interest. For this unit, we're looking at instead borrowing money from the bank, and then in the end, us having to give the bank more money because there's been interest accrued on it. So there's a bunch of different reasons why people would take out loans, and some of you may already have taken out a loan for your first car. So car loans, people want to make renovations on their house, they may take out a loan. A type of loan where you're buying a house is called a mortgage. Furniture stores offer loans for people buying furniture. There's all different kinds of reasons. One of the reasons you guys may be looking at loans soon will be for university, so student loans. So it's kind of the opposite with the sense of investing money. This with loans, we want to make sure our interest rate is as low as possible. So the interest accumulated is low, and we're paying back the least amount of money that we have to. So a couple of things. One term to know is something called collateral. So basically when the bank or the credit union or wherever the lender that you're going to is deciding if they're going to give you the loan or not, they will ask you if you have any collateral. So that would be something that you own that's considered an asset that you maybe could sell if you needed money, or the bank could take from you if you're not making your payments. A lot of times if you're buying a car, then the car would be considered that collateral, because if you don't make the payments on the car, then the car is taken away. For you guys, when you're starting out, you don't really own anything. So then the bank may ask instead for a co-signer for the loan, and that would probably be your parents. And so they'd have to sign off on the loan for you, so that if you didn't make the payments, then it'd be kind of up to them instead. So until, like when you're first starting out, no one's going to lend you like $400,000 for a house until you can prove that like you're a responsible person and you can pay that back and stuff. And then an amortization table is what you see here. It's a table that charts the interest getting accumulated as well as the payments paying down the loan. So when you borrow an amount of money, that's called the principal, and so that's how much you're borrowing. And when you make payments, every time you make a payment on a loan, some of it goes towards paying off the loan, paying off the principal, and some of it goes to paying off interest. So at the beginning of a loan, when the loan's really a large amount, a lot of the payment goes towards interest, and then as you pay down the loan, that amount will get less. So we're just going to look at a variety of questions that kind of cover a whole bunch of bases of people taking a loan. You should be familiar with the vocabulary, familiar with the variables, but where it gets tricky is with a lot of these questions, we're trying to pay off the loan in the end, so our future value would be zero instead of us looking for it. So Lars borrowed $15,000 from a bank. It's 5% compounded monthly to buy a car. The bank will use the car as collateral. Lars negotiated regular loan payments. The loan payments are $450, and he's paying them at the end of each month for 3 years. So if we're looking at this table, it's just charting the first 6 months of payments. So we wouldn't be filling something out like this because we'd be using technology to help us with our problems, right? At the bank, they're not filling out tables, they're using technology. So we just want to see, how does our solver match with the table? I've already filled in the values here for you. So basically with the N, we're looking at doing 6 months of payment. So my N would be 6 over 12, so 6 out of 12 months. I'm multiplying by 12 though because of my PY being 12. The interest rate's 5%. Now here I'm taking the $15,000 from the bank, so that's a positive present value of $15,000 because I'm initially taking that money. My payment is going to the bank. So because I'm giving that money away, that's going to be negative. And here I'm looking at my future value at the end of this 6-month period. How much do I still owe? So my PY is 12 because it's monthly payments. My CY is 12 because it's compounded monthly. So if you use your solver, you get $12,650.65. A little bit of a discrepancy, and that's just because the solver is way more accurate than a table where you're rounding. So that would be the answer for the first one. So you can stop a loan at any time and just check how much you still owe by stopping the solver at that period of time. If you wanted to get all the way to the end, you would be putting in, your full amount of payments there. So question number 2, we're looking at someone who's taking out a loan for university. A lot of times with university, like a person can't pay back the loan while they're in university. So the interest would just accumulate as the person's in university, and then like once they get a job and once they save up, then they pay back the loan. So it looks like here Anne's waiting 5 years to pay it back, and she's doing it in a single payment. Now why you see my payment as 0 is because the payment in the solver is something that's reoccurring. This is just a one-time payback, so it's not necessarily considered a payment. It's what she owes in the end. So for this one, my N would be 5 because it's for 5 years. My I is 6 for 6%. I'm borrowing 10,000, so it's positive, making no payments during the course of the loan. My PY is 1 because that's the standard PY that we keep it as when there's no payments. My CY, it looks like we're compounding annually. So I'm looking for my future value because I want to see how much interest is accumulated, and that will be what she has to pay back at the end of 5 years. So I get $13,382.26. So then looking at how much interest did she end up paying, she borrowed the $10,000, so we take that off the future value, and it looks like in the end this loan cost her $3,382.26. So if you're looking to get a student loan, just be careful with where you're looking and make sure you're getting low interest rate. There are some specific student loans for students, and that they don't have to pay them back until so long after they graduate, and then they keep the interest really low for you guys. For question 3, we're starting on looking at a house loan. So a house loan is called a mortgage. So with a mortgage, you're borrowing a huge amount depending on how much your house costs, and then you're paying it back, and usually a mortgage will be for like 25 years just because it's a lot of money to pay back. So mortgages are traditionally compounded semi-annually, so if that's not said in the question, your CY will always be 2. With a mortgage or a house loan, you are required to make a down payment. So depending on, I think right now you're asked to make a 10% down payment. That changes sometime. A little while ago when I bought a house, it was 5%. I think right now the current going rate is 10%. So what that means is if you're buying a house for $260,000, the bank won't loan you the $260,000. They want you to pay some of that down first. So first we need to find out what 10% of 260 is. So in part A, I take $260,000 and times it by 0.10, so that's 10% as a decimal. So that would mean I'd need $26,000 saved up for me to buy this house. So a lot of times people will first move into an apartment, use that time to save up their down payment, and then they're ready to buy a house, just because the down payment is quite high. So to find out how much Joe needs to borrow, we take the original amount of the house minus his down payment to get a loan total of $234,000. So for part B, when we're looking for the mortgage payment, the monthly mortgage payment, that's the only thing that should be left filled in. So N would be 25 years times 12, because our PY is going to be 12 for monthly payments. Our I is 3.75. Right now the going mortgage rate is about 2.75 or 2.9, like around there, so it's pretty good. So he's borrowing the $234,000, so that's a positive value. He's taking that from the bank. His future value is 0, so that's important because he wants to pay down the loan. So at the end of this 25 years, he will owe no money. So the future value would be 0. Monthly payments for 12 and CY compounding for 2. So if you use your solver, you get a monthly payment of $1,199.38. How much will he pay for the mortgage then? So even though the house, he borrowed the 234, in the end that's not what he's going to be paying because he has to pay interest on that. So to figure this out, we would use the formula of what was his payment times how many payments did he make. So here you can see I wrote out his payment times the 12 payments a year times the 25 years. So in the end, he pays for the mortgage $359,814. Last part, how much interest did Joe pay then? So you take what he paid minus what he actually borrowed, right? So he did borrow the $234,000, but he did end up paying more than that because of interest. So when we subtract the two, we see that in the end he paid $125,814 of interest. So yes, that's a lot of money. Yes, that's reality. So mortgages do end up costing you about a third of the price in interest in the end. So that's why people are encouraged to pay it off as quick as possible, make more frequent payments. So monthly payment is like the least amount of payments you can make. Traditionally, a bank will encourage you to make semi-monthly or bi-weekly payments because the faster you make the payment, the less time there would be then for the interest to accumulate for that amount of money. So the faster you pay off, the better. And then the last question, just looking at a basic loan here. So wanting to borrow $8,000. When you borrow money, you're going to have lots of options of where you borrow it from, what their going rates are, and those kind of things. So here, looking at the $8,000 loan, there's two options. Should I make the $1,800 payment at the end of the year? Should I make the $34 payment at the end of each week? So here in my solver, I don't know how long it's going to take me to pay off the loan. So N is what was blank. I knew the interest rate. I knew how much was being borrowed and the payment that was going against it. For both, I want my future value at 0 because eventually this loan is going to be paid off. We don't know how long it's going to take, but eventually it's going to be paid off. And then our PY for option A was 1 because it was a one payment a year. It was reoccurring, so that's why there was payments. And my CY was 1. For my option B, I'm doing weekly payments, compounded weekly, so that would be 52. So to figure out what would be the better option, I'm taking my N, which is how many payments I'm making. So for my option A, I'm making 5.006. I kept 3 decimal places. That 0.006 is not necessarily hugely significant, but it's just indicating that at the end of 5 years, you'll have a teeny tiny bit to pay off. So you just have to make that final little payment. So I keep those decimal numbers just because it doesn't work out to be a whole number of payments. So the 5.006 times the payment of $1,800 gives me about $9,000 in the end that loan costs me. For option B, I've got 255 approximate payments. Keep in mind those are weekly payments and they're much less, so it looks like I'm, spending more, but the payments are more frequent, so that's why the number's so high. If you wanted to see how many years that would take you to pay off, you'd take the 255 and divide by the PY, which is divided by 52. So anyways, my N times my payment of $34 gives me in the end a loan that cost me about $8,800. So looking at those two options, B would be the one that I would recommend because in the end you're paying the lower amount. Okay, so I know I went through this fast, so just because I'd already filled them all in, but hopefully that was good enough understanding. So it's very similar to, like I said, what we did with the first unit, but now we're thinking in terms of a flip. So you have to be really careful. Is there a payment or not? Is the future value 0, or are we trying to figure out how much is accumulated in the end? Just be careful with those kind of aspects. Okay.